was fast. These engines could up to 15 miles an hour. Which was considering that was the motor cars at the time, if there were any, were horses trains, you know. Lorries, when they came in, were restricted to 20 miles an hour. Ferry, it was made in 1918, at the end of the First World War, and it has a different to a lot of the other engines. You have gears, generators, when you put a change gear, it's a 3-speed engine. You think, oh, that's fine, what, you got a clutch or something, and you put it in, no. The gears are all in measure all the time. So if you want to change gear, you got to stop and physically pull the lever over and watch the gear go in and then start again. And if you're doing that on a hill, the steer person's going to get up and put a shock underneath, otherwise you start to roll backwards. So there's only a handbrake on there. But that's the way it was done. But this one isn't good. It's got a chain drive, just like the twin lorries that later on. It's like a big motorcycle chain, really. And that enables something different on the back wheel. If you think about it, the gears are in constant mech, and the wheels are moving up and down, and they're going to move out the mech, aren't they? Well, this has got a chain drive, which enables the back wheels, it doesn't matter, it's dependent. So you've actually got suspension on the rear wheel, so it's quite a step forward. Firstly, it's not in a big tractor, so it's probably the track of the trailer, big tractors, the first tractors were so trailers. They were 95 tons, legislation says that it's 65 tons, and one driver can operate it then with one trailer. Obviously their employees, employers that operate these engines, well that's great, they can cut their wages in half. The task that we go around, and this next one coming along, Thorough Gold Medal engine, took part in making a traffic surface. We'll speak of different vehicles around the country to see what works with the outside to where it's coming. See what efficiency to operate the company, and this Thorough that we've got in front of us now, particular one, the Thorough Gold Medal won the prize in their category over time. That was a feather in their cap, wasn't it, Nathan? Because then they could say, this is the gold medal tractor. And so they were all got a gold medal after that, but some of the other manufacturers were really good. But because they had, as you say, the reliability and the fuel consumption, it didn't come out on top, didn't it? Well, that's true. Fortunately, enough to nice people around, George Estes, first engine of 1942, with his collection, he's probably one of the strongest engines in same ownership for our Thorough Gold Medal. Well, we just say, we have a passenger on here, Sir Barry Ford, a well-known steam engine racing driver. Don't worry about that. No, we've got the new product now, a product of Sentinel is screw-free. The Sentinel being the man that screws, if you like, at the gate for the Ford. Literally rock hard, solid steel, not being moved, strong as not. And that's why they call them a bit tractor. One that's very still, I think they had to do a forward in the step, what they made in the first place. Quite a late development tractor. In fact, one of them trying to switch trees outwards, load them on trailers, and then not forward. In fact, they have a separate central engine on the back, with the engine, separate with the engine underneath the driving. And as it's going round, you'll see very clearly on this one, you can be sure that the large rear engine on joint, you'll see the same drive to the rear wheel. And then again, you'll notice that all the other top metal wheels are really strong in that. It's fire, that's right, that's a big point. But it's strong because at that time, when we are talking about 1934, when this was built, diesel lorries were coming in, they were called that, they were called spoiling vehicles in those days. And this was far in excess in terms of the speed and the security that they got. But it has another big difference to it. All the boilers on these engines, you can see at the step, you behind it. The horizontal is like just going to stop the train. This one, the boiler is vertical. There's the bottom of it underneath here, and it goes up into the cab. That cab is like being in a sauna. On a day like this, you know, you're steaming hot, aren't you? I'm surprised they've got the doors open. Yeah, right. And the separate steam engine at the back that Aidan was talking about is here. And you've got this massive steel frame, or if you like, but you're going to the ground and you can let down on those chains. So that when it's pulling a big log out the jump, a big log out the forest, a jungle, well, it could be a jungle. Then the rod is against with all the mud and muck and scrap that are lying around. So it was pulling the lorry backwards. But now you put those flags in the ground and that horrible turn and the wind straight out. That's the idea. That's two steam engines in one there. You've got a few 8040s coming in now. Still by 8040s. Basic thing, I would have run around in about 18
consider it a tip.
It's a little bit, I've got to hide it really. It's a bit naked. Especially it hasn't got a photograph. It's not got the tins as we call them, actually ideal on a day like this. Normally, there's the boiler, it's a big kettle, massive kettle. So you have insulation around that, more modern. In the old days, we wooden insulation, and then you put the tin, rolls round it. We'll keep the heat in, that's the whole point, keep the heat in. So of course, with wooden insulation, sometimes actually overheated and they just call fire, but this is one figure out across the a brand new boiler, shake down, and the thing is any minute, 4 weeks, like this, it's holding up well, but why it's not failing at the moment, sticking everything down well, and I sat down here next year with a 4% make work and line off. Yeah, that's a challenge to you and your part of it. But a great started off, didn't it? You remember with us as an apprentice, someone stopped him 12-year-old, and he's moved on, he's pretty good, and he's now in charge of the steam engine. And he's done most of the work himself, an awful lot of the work himself. Anyway, we're not move on. The next Asian roller, sort of age actually, but it's quite noticed, it's got the same sort of shitty as the other, so it's a little deeply. Eventually you've got a safety diesel boiler engine on it, still about
We're going for a walk, yeah.
That's the fact, it's really a big safety engine on wheels. Single cylinder. Full Thunderbird, because it goes thump, it's like thunder. And it's about 12 mile ton, isn't it? It really can break the ground shut. The whole thing, the flywheel on there is going around, it's actually keeping the engine, the momentum of the big single cylinder engine.
All that knowledge.
Absolutely amazing. And how do you start it? Well, we used to have to sort of bump start it, put it with another engine, but the way we started, see that big cylinder on the top, got nothing to do with steam, it's full of compressed air. And it's quite a high pressure, you got the 200-pound pressure on that, and the punch of that pressed air, to start with compressed air, pushes the cylinder down for the first time to get it going. moment, thanks for answering it. But it was more of an experiment. It goes right back to 1922, this one, for a digital, crazy. But we have a large engine. This is Nightmare, coming way down to see with us from Exeter. But come from further than that, the section of course Australia, and we've got a rather large coal buster on. We have original tools on the back, just like others. Carrying extra fuel, because there is a area of fuel down in Australia, so it burns a lot more fuel. So, primarily a road locomotive, used for heavy haulage, so it's a large version of the traction. We have many of these roads in the country also. Pre-sensor, Gamma lorry, 681,
Tuesday morning.
Absolutely fabulous. It's great to see like that. And it's unrated, feeling that. Wait, let me speak to the next quick announcement. Is that if you want to go up there, it's driving your 20 company, doesn't you? Because when we finish getting here, we're going to have something coming up the back here. You're a steam engine. And we're going to take the money off you and do it for Cancer Research UK, which is one of the nominated charities on the project in trust. So we're going to have line up at the back for it. I'm going to try and get half an hour for everybody to go to doing the steam. Okay? Number 18 is going up. Austin and Older, okay? That's right, hard. And it's going to finish my off here. Looking after the things in here. It's got my dad in back in 1980. Looking after the things there. Then what do you say? Back on side, they were in the days of steam engines, over quite like big companies now. But they could go all over the country and do the main road. So county councils and urban councils used to have their own road that's responsible for local roads, using a lot better than the government. Honestly, they're really big. But you've got the main road. Then you had one of the big contractors in Edinburgh, one of the biggest, based in Dorchester, down in West Country, but they went to the road and of course you had to have a living right there because you lived with your engine. It was a 24-hour job. And did you mention the scarifier on this one, Adrian? Really good scarifier on that. Scarifier, put a couple of signs in there. You'll probably see this when the engine travels around. While the engine is in motion, you have the driver or mate on the side and try to wheel on the side, let the tines down into the road, effectively clear out the road, so that you press the main on the stairs. We won't just demonstrate that here, in case you pick up any power lines or terminals. Oh, look at this, Dave, this is your engine. It's not your engine, it was the one you were very first on, Kathleen, wasn't it? But taking right at the end of the thing, and I know that you're going to bring on through it, we're going over to what access mode, and we're doing that with the old steam engine when you're just the tarmac, which is just don't press the tar. And fair enough, they stop and then they reverse and go back. If that on a hot tarmac, you have what they call dwell or a bump in the road. This has this capacity to go through and then immediately into reverse. You try doing that in the car with automatic steering, you think straight away and straightway forward. That's just one of the many features of this which we haven't got time to talk about, but Adrian's going to come to some of them. Take one was not made in water. They're based in stone. That plant has got several advanced details on it. One quick reverse. One thing you might know is this sort of engine has got a flywheel like the other engines have. That means we can quickly reverse. It's got a double high pressure the back axle is a solid back axle, it's three sub axles, Cameron hose, the force cell between the front and rear rollers, between the plate. Yeah, look, actually it's a very advanced roller, and a lot of the pieces on this they carried over to their decent rollers, and it's like built afterwards. But what we've got here, we're at the other extreme, yeah. You see someone with the front Fowler Boeing. Agricultural revolution, what it is. Yes, John Fowler up in Leeds, patented the ploughing wheat engine. They gradually developed it and different types of engineers before it's got a wheat drum underneath. You have a pair of these engines, and rather than driving these engines on the field and track the field at the time to plough, you park the engine either end of the field and bring the wheat lines out and put a plough between the engines. Revolutionised ploughing. I mean, you have one man behind the horse, walking up and down the field all day. You've got 6 trips per plough from the field in one go. In that field, they have to think about quite technical applications. But the steam engine, down the ploughing equipment, all the cultivation and stuff on the plough, it's also steam dredging in dredge lake, half the inside of the lake, and or a dredge bucket along. And in fact, quite a lot of steam ploughing engines used compared to ploughing engines work quite well. In fact, work right up until about 2010, doing stuff that commercially. So the ploughing engine, some of these ploughing engines work very long hard lives. Royalty is going to be another alien water engine. The product of the alien water factory at Rochester, near Rochester in Kent, was on the creek leading into the Thames there. They produced more speedboats than any other company, and they went all of them exported all over the world, but alien water is more than those. But Royalty is one of the engines we've had on this field for many, many years, although there was a break very recently when it had a complete rebuild. It was built in 1909. It went through, into the scrapyard of Hardwick in the late 70s. But John Wilson bought it for preservation. It's now owned by Bob Watt. And as I say, it's been a regular attendant of this rally for years. It's just undergone a major rebuild by Bob Watt's team. And it's going to come back on. Again, another engine close to my heart. Jim Wilson wanted to farm. First engine the Bronx in the back on in the late 70s, but Royalty, when Motor Burning showed it, to attend this rally, the first full-size engine I ever steered, down to the steam marshalling on a left step 2, and picked up his Motor Burning and polished glass for a double body steering engine around the arena. So about 40 years ago, 1985, I steered around the arena. And sounds like I've got steering today, so something I might be able to go today. Yeah, that'd be good. Margaret, Lady Margaret, that's the game out there, registration BSX 831, and he said that, so you can spot the engine. Built in 1936. It's an alien bathroom. So what happened there was, at that time, by the time it had the 30s, these rollers were coming in. They went through the amalgamated general engineering company up there. Hellingly moved up with Barton and Dragster. Mostly Hellingly Barton engines and mostly Hellingly design parts. This was built in 1936, and I believe it was due to be, well, it's last night, it was due to go to China, but never got exported. So when you're exporting to China then, you see, they can export up. Anyway, Lady Margaret went in 1936 to the Buckinghamshire County Council as their engine number 5. Lasted with them well into the 60s, almost up into the 1960s. So I paid to stop that down. Mostly qualified Marshall's Gainsborough up in the top part of Cambridgeshire. And they installed engines all over. They started with agents told you all about the board stations which preceded things. But they installed all over the world. Well, just had some pictures sent to me of some of their engines derricks and they did Zimbabwe of all places. But this one came from Tasmania. Yes, 340 from Tasmania. A 3-speed, 7% is very powerful. So engines turning up here from all over the world. Yeah. And then we got Gunner, went through there.
Wanting to see the oil bath. Why oil bath? Well, my notes said he goes round and there's a sort of looks like a tank. It's like an oil tank. Not a boiler, it's behind the cylinder block. The motor comes down to the block and instead of waiting around in the open air and throwing oil all over the place, it's rusted in a bath of oil. And we had another oil bath come around this arena last year and in case you own that going around, he said it's still running on its original bearings. So it wasn't just a sales gimmick, something to be worth reckoning with, but there's only one succeeding significance on this tractor.
Oil bath is free up because we've got all the motion and it's called it's like your car engine. Like your car engine, the question is in the back, it's basically around in front of you. We're on a good way, we get bath the oil, pressure. But Stafford was the last one to go through there, I think. It's a bowl. I think it's probably that bowl. It's not. It is. Someone got through the thing record. Stafford built in 1891. It's the last, the oldest engine. That's the one that's gone through 1891. Spent most of his working life in Norfolk. In the agricultural business. If you go down to line, you get fine. It's worth going. Down the bottom of the field towards the church. They've got demonstrations of steam crashing and saw bench work, which is what these engines did. And say, there was over from the broadband engine that had been towed around by horses, and they reached to either a saw bench or a threshing machine. Threshing machine was the return to the modern combine harvester by belt, driven to the flywheel on the side there, and that was the sort of agricultural work they did. But that one, I've got the note, it said that it was used on the northern beaches with crab nets. And I said, well, how's somebody going to the sea? No. They used it as the crab nets laid out in the morning, right? And of course, all the crafty crabs would climb into the crab net, and the engine would put the chains out and pull them out, pull the crab nets out. So it must have been working on the beach. So who knows what the full bearing is to it, but it's here today. Anyway, we're going to go to the shop, we're going to do the engine, and then we're going to do the steering engine. So we've got the right time. So I've got pretty well over half an hour. So if you line up at the back with a big yellow gazebo here, line up just there, and we'll get you on. Well, it depends how many engines we have left in your engine. Not too many, otherwise it's well, the risk of you getting run over, obviously, you don't want that. So how many engines we've got, and then we'll get you all in on that. Over to you, John.
Thank you very much, David. Of course, miniature engines aren't exactly that. They are a miniature copy of the full size. When you look at it in front of me at the moment, you can slow yourself down a bit, and that is a road locomotive. And of course, it's a 6-inch scale, and these are incredibly powerful, whether they're in a 4-inch scale or a 6. They're powerful enough to actually pull a Discovery or a Land Rover, anything that size across the arena. So if you want to park up, my friend, that's it. And then we've got the second road locomotive here, which is called Mid. Now it's always important for these guys to actually get their engines today, and there's always a story behind it. Now, when you look at engines, most of the manufacturers were based on the East Coast arenas. People like Transform, down in Bedford, down in Norfolk, Marshall, and Gainsborough. And then you've got all the Lincoln connections as well. And of course, these manufacturers, there must be some incentive back in the day for them to have set up in the East Coast arena. Perhaps it was the vast amount of flat farmland and the requirement of agricultural engines that were required to actually farm the land. Now, the use of a road locomotive like this would have been mainly using air. And they just heavy
Right,
load
there you go.
between the two, and companies like Hellingly had received of this point, and they would be pulling the heavy load two locomotives. Now the road locomotive is like gear sort of design, got a solid flywheel. As it has a spoke flywheel, like the agriculture engine next door to me, now as it has a spoke flywheel, a lot of these companies actually pinstripe all their engines. You can see the amount of pinstripes the British engine has got on it. Now, as the spoke flywheel has pinstriping on it, because the road locomotive was noisy, it was constant, and it had overtaken a horse back in the early part of the century, the pinstripes would have been almost like a stroke, and it would switch the horses. So that's why the road locomotive is one of the big engines, towing those went for a solid flywheel. And you see got a fantastic example on the back of here of what would be known as the lift fan. Now whether they have a road roller, an agricultural engine, or road locomotive, quite often they would go away from Manchester there doing their job, and as contractors they needed somewhere to live. So they would live in the living van. In the understrung boxes underneath of the living van, they would have the coal. And of course that's the other thing they had to worry about was the coal. But if they wanted water, they would get their water by dropping their nose into a drainage pit or a big pot. So you can imagine what sort of life these guys had out there working long days. So, this one's the road locomotive, especially with a canopy. It's very rare to actually find two canopies the same on any steam engine, whether it's full-size or miniature. And the reason for that is it was quite a low-intake job in the beginning. And definitely the bosses never put a canopy on. They just wanted that engine out there working. And they turned to making their own canopy. The steer person and the fireman would make their own canopy, and that was it. And that is why you don't find two canopies the same. So you've got two lovely examples there of road locomotives. We come down to this one, the humble agricultural engine, and its use back in the day could be molded. So this is in a forestry scenario. That flywheel may well have driven a saw bench in the woods. It may well have been used on the farm doing a fresh machine. Used in a quarry situation, it might have been a stone cutter. But, that flywheel, when you think about it, look around the side here, we've got safety engines. The little safety engines fit into our industrial revolution very nicely because the safety engines were at the turn of the century. So they were about in the 1900s, just when mechanisation these engines came about, and you moved from chemical steam to mechanisation. But the safety engines done exactly the same job. They all had a flywheel. They drove machinery, they drove everything when they used their flywheel. So you can see how important an engine like this is. Now again, we've got the road locomotive here in blue, and I always say that if you've got a young person who wants to find out all about the steam, then this is the ideal place. Because not only can you see the firebox, you can see where the water table is, and you can work out how the combustion is obtained through the drive system. So it's a very important thing that youngsters get an indication of in that point. Because when you look at a big engine, you actually cannot get up high enough to see what all the controls are. Now if you think of water and metal don't mix, well in fact it's not wrong, because normally water and metal equals well. But you don't see rust on these engines, and that's because these guys use an awful lot of oil. And when you look at an engine like this, you've got a lot of oil for that these guys are oiling nearly every hour of the day. Anyway, we move along to the Foden steam lorry. Now the Foden steam lorry was one of only a couple makers down there, the other one being Sentinel. I thought I saw Sentinel, yes, there's one there. I'll talk about that in a minute, that big one. So Foden went on into the 40s and 50s to actually do diesel lorries. They become ER Foden with the Edwin Foden, the very great company. But when you steam lorry in full-size form, it was a very long, arduous day, because not only did it go on 22 miles an hour, you had to steam the thing up in the beginning. You also had to load it, and very often they would tow a trailer with a full of load on the trailer. Now the problem was, at the end of the day, you had to decommission your engine and get it ready for the following day. So these things did work 8-hour days, they did work 10-hour days, to my knowledge, they were 16, 17 out there. Very often, it only involves, hot hydrogen work, it must have been absolutely